So you and I were talking about this offline a little bit earlier. One team we really want a piece of, any piece of, and I'm lucky I have stock in, is the Miami Dolphins. So let me hear your thoughts, and obviously since I have a little bit of stake in the game, I will let you know what I think.
Yeah, this is an offense that we both agree is going to be explosive. There's speed all across this offense that we really like. And we saw last year what they were able to do, even with Tua missing 7 games last year, the amount of numbers that they were able to put up with between Tyreek and Waddle. But I think on the running backs too, we've kind of done a deeper dive into the running backs on one of our shorts where, you look at Jeff Wilson Jr. and you look at Raheem Mostert, and they both put up over 1,000 all-purpose yards each, and you add Devin A-Chain to the mix, there's speed all across this offense. And we know Mike McDaniels and the kind of the offense he likes to run with the spread run offense and play action off of that. They hit deep balls fairly well with accuracy. So with Tua coming back, and hopefully this all revolves around Tua being healthy. And you can make this
Correct.
argument across the board for any of the teams that we like. If Tua is healthy, the numbers that they can put up, and we kind of talked offline about this as well, is that, you can even make the argument Tyreek in years past was a late first round, early second round. But, if Tua was healthy last year, he could have been wide receiver 1 overall over Jefferson. And that's the
Yeah.
kind of numbers that he was putting up. And, you look at before Tua's injury, the kind of offense that this was, and they were throwing up, the second game against Baltimore where they throw up 50 points. Tua had 6 touchdowns in that game. And it was just explosive play after explosive play. And I think that's what the appealing things about this offense is that any one of these guys can hit a hole, take a 5-yard pass, and take it deep, 80 yards. And that goes for the running backs too. They all have track speed. And so it's very appealing to have a piece of this. And whether it's getting Waddle and Tyreek early or being able to snag a guy like Tua in the, post 8th round, or get a guy like Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson, or Devin A-Chain, and any one of those guys you can get 10th round or later. But those are the guys like who else would you rather get, like a backup running back on another team, or one of these guys that's going to have an impact? So
Correct.
I know you have a little stake in the game with Waddle, but I love this offense.
Yeah. So you hit the nail on the head with my thoughts. I mean, anybody on this team can take a small reception from Tua or a run around the outside and just beeline to the end zone. And that home run ability is what you want, especially in fantasy football, because, standard league here that we talk about, touchdowns matter. And one of the big things too is you may think of yourself, well, there's 3 running backs. Who's going to be the starter? Well, we don't know yet, but that doesn't matter. Both running backs between Mostert and Wilson were viable last year. And even if you don't get one of those guys, you can take a late flyer on A-Chain who they're going to try and get him the ball with that speed that he has. I mean, when they drafted him, McDaniel, first thing he said when he picked up the phone was, "Are you still fast?" So he's going to find a way to get him the ball. And here's the one thing that I'm thinking, this is just me, in my personal opinion, that I could see possibly happening in Miami, is with the injuries that happened to Tua last year. In order for him to take maybe some less hits early on, maybe we may see this. I don't know if this would be season long, but you may see a lot smaller, quick, shorter, sharper passes, some quick dump offs to the running backs, him getting the ball out of his hands quick and letting these guys just do the work. And look at Jalen Waddle last year, over 18 yards per catch. Insane numbers. I mean, Tyreek can do the same thing, and these running backs get the ball in their hand and they just go straight. You fall forward for 5 yards. So I love this offense. I love the capability of them and the speed. I have a piece in it in our draft, but if I'm you guys out there listening, look for an opportunity and don't be afraid, if you really want to take Tyreek Hill one spot after Justin Jefferson, because he's worthy of that pick. I can make the argument that he's better than any other of the receivers to draft there and running backs.
I could make that same argument where I would probably, Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, put them in any order, and I'm happy with any one of them.
Correct.
And so you can make an argument for each one of them to have volume there. The thing with Tyreek Hill is that he is explosive. I mean, he has track speed and can take the ball. And, especially with standard, the big playability is so important because you're breaking off not only chunk yardage, but have the ability to break off the chunk yardage and the touchdown.
Yep.
And that matters in fantasy. And we saw that a lot out of Tyreek. We saw that a lot out of Waddle. We didn't see that too much out of the running backs there, but, that doesn't matter because, again, each one of them is going to have a role to play. And even with Mozart and Wilson, a lot of people are off of them. But Devin Achane right now, and a lot of the ADPs that we're seeing, he's going up the board and he's being drafted 10 spots higher than Raheem Mozart is. And that's crazy to me. But I mean, that's my personal opinion. But that's a value if you're able to get someone else to goes and gets Devin Achane in the 10th round. Well, that means Raheem Mostert's sitting there for you in the 12th. And that's perfect.
Exactly.
And that's a perfect value for you because he's going to get the opportunities. He knows his offense.
Yeah, and again, the caveat to this offense is if we don't have Tua at the helm, you can't rely on anything. What we saw was Tyreek getting fed when Tua was out, and Waddle got his, but he had a lot less targets on average when Tua was out. So that's something to keep an eye on, and you are putting your faith in Tua. But, hey, it's worth doing it because these guys will win you seasons.
Yeah, and I'll say this is to kind of close out the Dolphins is that even if Tua gets hurt, they got Mike White. And I'm a Jet fan, so obviously take this with some bias. But Mike White is a better option than Teddy Bridgewater. From a fantasy perspective, he can handle sustaining wide receivers in the big play. He's going to dump off the ball. It's perfect for the kind of offense that they run, which is get the ball out of the quarterback's hands and into your playmaker's hands. So it's a better secondary option, even if Tua goes down.
It's a great point because Mike White pushed the ball down the field really well when he played for the Jets, and that's something Teddy couldn't do with his two gloves when he was with the Dolphins. He struggled with it, held on the ball a little bit too long. Mike White did make good plays when he was in there for the Jets. He's green, or behind the ears, but he can get the job done.
He was green. Now he's
green. Well, speaking of green and speaking of Mike White and the Jets are another offense that the two of us both want to try and target and get somebody from their team on our fantasy teams. And I'll start off saying is like Aaron Rodgers is a quarterback I'm targeting in drafts because he is falling down lower and lower in ADP than he should be just based off of how he did last year. And we all know how he did last year. He did last year decent across the board, better than most, but he was also dealing with a smorgasbord of rookie wide receivers and injuries across his entire team and an offensive line that was a little bit more depleted. You now put yourself in a situation where you've got a solid wide receiver one. You have solid veteran wide receivers around him with Lazard and Corey Davis. And then you give yourself solid running game. We know Michael Carter can handle the load at times, and you've got a new speedy rookie coming in. And so I think when you get Breece Hall back, this offense is running on all cylinders. And that's what they were missing last year, was just somebody at the helm to push them over the hill. They were great first half of the season, right? And then all of a sudden just fell off the shelf because quarterback play was just abysmal. And now you get yourself a guy who has a Hall of Fame track record. I love it. Garrett Wilson excites me. I think he's going to go lower in your drafts than he should be. This guy is going to put up numbers that Devontae Adams did for the Green Bay Packers. Like, that's how good I feel about it. And Lazard, to me, is another sleeper. This guy is going to be the wide receiver too there. And I like Corey Davis. I think he's a great receiver, but the rapport with Lazard is there already. He's going to be the outlet, the go-to guy if he gets himself on the field more than the other receivers.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of my rankings of their wide receivers is a little bit different. Like Garrett Wilson, obviously number one there, Lazard number two there, and then for number three actually is Mecole Hardman over Corey Davis. I think what they can do with Mecole Hardman, you saw what they did in Kansas City with him. Sure. He used a lot of those trickery plays, especially down the goal line. He can do a lot with the ball in his hands after a catch or after a jet sweep. He's a guy that really intrigues me there. I think this offensive line is a heck of a lot better than last year.
If it can stay healthy.
Listen, you can make that argument again for anyone.
We just know the Jets. Yeah, I was just saying, they haven't been able to stay healthy the past couple seasons.
Yeah, they get Joe Tippmann, a huge monster of a center. I think they have a really competitive offensive line. What I think is really interesting, and this just came out today with Aaron Rodgers talking about Garrett Wilson's IQ, and he compared him to Devontae Adams, to Jordy Nelson, to James Jones, to Greg Jennings, and that's a heck of a praise coming from a guy like Aaron Rodgers.
Absolutely.
And I think you look at Garrett Wilson's year last year, and he put up 1,100 yards His touchdowns were low, which dropped him in the standard rankings. But you could imagine if he was doing 1,100 yards last year with Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, and Mike White throwing him the football.
I know.
You add Aaron Rodgers in there, and you can just see the numbers go up exponentially. I don't care if there's more competition around him. I think this offense is going to be a lot better as a whole. And when Breece Hall comes back, I'm targeting Jets all across my draft. So I have my top tier guys that I want in the first couple of rounds. I have my mid tier guys that I'm targeting there, but I want a piece of this offense, and I don't care where it is. Like if I have to get Mecole Hardman in the 12th round, I'll get Mecole Hardman in the 12th round. And because, if anything happened to Lazard, Corey Davis comes in, Mecole's still going to be used as a kind of a utility guy. I had him last year and picked him up off waivers, and he was scoring every week, and he had Mahomes throwing the ball and the gadgetry that they had there. Breece Hall's a guy I absolutely love. I don't care that he comes off an injury. Like he's going to come back healthy. He's going to be ready for the season. And when he is, again, this offensive line is a heck of a lot better than it was last year. He's explosive. Michael Carter is a guy that I like early in the season, and then Izzy is another guy, Ibanaconda, that I absolutely love, and I think is a deep sleeper early in the season. Maybe not long in this later in the season, but early in the season. But even guys like C.J. Uzomah and Tyler Conklin, I really like at a tight end position, especially if you're going to go and get a lower end tight end, having them as a second. Aaron Rodgers loves a big tight end, and you have two great pass catching tight ends that they have there. So I want a piece of this offense. It's just a matter of where I'm going to get them.
Yeah, and I love Garrett Wilson. I wasn't a believer until you really watch his game film and you watch how he played last year, and he was constantly open. There's a reason why Elijah Moore fizzled out after a rookie showing that was okay, but you expected him to be the number one guy going into the season, and Garrett Wilson himself just took control, took the reins, and I mean he was Ohio State, right? Garrett Wilson.
Ohio State.
Yeah, you could trust Ohio State receiver any day. Those guys run routes like machines. I mean, that's why Michael Thomas was led the league in receiving, Ohio State guy. Like you just look at the Ohio State receivers over the past 6-7 years, and they've been solid guys.
Yeah, you had Olave and Garrett Wilson as the top two Rookie of the Year candidates.
Was Terry McLaurin Ohio State too? I think.
I believe he was.
Right, I think he was too. So I don't quote me on that. I think he is, but you just look at these guys from Ohio State, and they breed good wide receivers there, and so does Alabama. I mean, you can't go wrong with these guys. So, I mean, here, my opinion, I like Breece Hall. I think Breece Hall. This is if he didn't get hurt, would be a running back one position. I think he'd be drafted at the tail end of the first round, early second round. You're going to see him be a running back two option because you just don't know how they're going to bring him back and how they're going to manage him. So that could be a steal in your draft, taking the chance on him as your running back two, and then taking one of those other guys later as insurance, because nobody's going to jump up to get Michael Carter. Nobody's going to jump up to get Abanikana, because nobody's going to want to waste early pick on that. So you can drag that out, and you're the one who's got Breece Hall. Your option could be there. And sure enough, who knows? When Breece Hall's healthy, that guy's a monster. He's a machine. He's exactly what the Jets wanted to get out of him, and he proved it last year. So
I think this goes for, without saying, for all these teams that we like offensively, that the thing about them is they all have good defenses too. So you're talking positive game script. You're talking scoring early. You're talking running the ball late. So you like all aspects of that offense because they're going to be able to do a lot, and they can throw up points in the early stages of the game and then drag out the game afterwards. So they're going to have more offensive opportunities because they have take away and shut down defenses. And that's why we like these teams, is because it's not just, it's not like the Chicago Bears last year where they're going to be down in every game and it's just going to be the Justin Fields show. Like, you'd expect more from those teams that are going to be late in games. I think there's some value in that. And we'll talk about that later with the teams we want to avoid, with teams that just overall their roster is not that good, but there are guys you're going to like there just because of negative game script. I think the positive game script is another thing that bodes well offensively for especially running backs that are going to be able to eat up yards and eat up touches at the end of the game.
Yeah, and I mean, you said it perfectly. The two teams we talked about are both in the same division, in a division where offenses are pretty heavy. The defenses are good there too, but they beat each other up. So you're going to have some shootouts. This next team, and we just spoke about a player that just moved from the New York Jets to the Cleveland Browns with Elijah Moore, is the Cleveland Browns. This may surprise some people, but to me, this team here is sneaky. I think this team is going to find opportunities to present themselves and score points. And there's plenty of people on this team that can score those points. You've got a seriously good wide receiver in Amari Cooper. You've got a great wide receiver too in Elijah Moore, but Donovan Peoples-Jones had his abilities last year. I remember grabbing him off waivers early in the season and plug in and play him. You've got Nick Chubb.
And Devin Tillman.
Yes. But you've got Nick Chubb, who is a running back that is constantly disrespected in fantasy ADP. This guy has been the number 5 running back 3 years running. There's no reason why he shouldn't be drafted top 5, but for some reason we don't. He no longer has Kareem Hunt. So now he's got more opportunities. We may see him catch a little bit more balls. And then here's the thing. Deshaun Watson is a very good quarterback. You cannot judge him on his play last season. You could judge him on his off-field antics, and we don't agree with his off-field antics, but you can't judge him on his last, 6 games that he played last season or whatever it may have been, because the 3 years prior, this man was unstoppable in football. He was a top 5 quarterback across the board. And, when you throw for an average of over 4,000 yards in those 3 seasons, and you throw for an average of 28 touchdowns in those 3 seasons, and you run for an average of 470 yards in those 3 seasons, those are top quarterback numbers. And like I said in my short earlier this week, he would have been, with his average numbers over those 3 seasons, would have been 7 points shy of Jalen Hurts and the QB5 last year. So give this man a full preseason, a full training camp, and the full season, and he will not surprise you. He is going to go back to Houston times. He's still young. He's still got the tools to play the game. And I think people are sleeping on him. And to me, he's this guy that needs to be drafted in the top 10 quarterbacks in fantasy. So that's how I feel about the Browns.
We talked a little bit earlier in one of our earlier episodes about when Elijah Moore went there. We were talking about if Deshaun Watson returned to 80% of what he was. Let's say he doesn't come back to fully what he was. Let's say he comes back to 80% of what he was. He was still a top 5 quarterback then. But you can make the argument in Texas, and that when he was with the Texans, he didn't really have a lot of weapons around him. You had Brandon Cooks. There wasn't a ton of weapons around him.
I think I will say at the tail end, he did have D-Hop and he had Will Fuller for that one of those. I think for one of those seasons, for sure.
Right. You're right. And then he had David Johnson during the only year that he was good. But I say the offense here is a lot better. You have Njoku. I think Tillman's going to come on later this year, but Donovan Peoples-Jones, Elijah Moore, Amari Cooper, Nick Chubb, who I think that Nick Chubb is easily one of the most, like you said, the most disrespected running back in fantasy football. I mean, he's going to see less stacked boxes this year because there's an actual threat of a pass, and there's no Kareem Hunt there. So that's the guy I'm targeting. If I'm in the middle of the first round and Jefferson, Kupp, Tyreek go, and obviously the big time running backs are off the board. If CMC, if I'm sitting there in the 6th or 7th pick, Chubb's on my short list of guys I want there.
I'm taking him over Najee Harris. I'm taking him over Derrick Henry every time
easily
because I have more confidence in this guy.
Yeah, it's crazy to see Bijan going over him.
Don't even start with me about the ADP for Bijan.
It doesn't make sense to me.
What doesn't make sense is the comparison to Saquon Barkley. I'm partial being a Giants fan, but I tell you what, when you watch film of Saquon Barkley in college and then you go watch Bijan Robinson and they try and compare the two of them, I don't see the comparison because I don't see the same athlete.
No.
Bijan's going to be a good running back in the NFL, but they are not the same person, and he's not the unicorn that Saquon was. There's a reason why he didn't go top 2. There's a reason why the Arizona Cardinals didn't draft him at 3 and decided to trade down. The's a reason. He's not.
There's no disrespect. There's not disrespect to Bijan Robinson. I think he's really talented. But is he ready are we ready his rookie year to come into an Atlanta Falcons offense and saying this guy is going to just completely take over carries from a guy that they drafted last year? And it's a stacked backfield. There's 3 legitimate running backs there.
Algier did a great job.
Last
year.
And we're seeing now Nick Chubb with the most touches he's had in 3 years potentially, and people are disrespecting him by saying he's outside the top 10 I've seen.
Yeah.
It's
And
ridiculous.
I mean, let's just talk about Najee Harris, as a running back that was drafted high up in the first round. A couple years ago when he was a rookie, he's a guy who came out, and obviously they weren't touting him as like the next Saquon, the next big running back, but he was still running back 4 in standard leagues across the board. So I mean, like I don't see a pathway, and this is because Bijan is a Falcon, for him to jump Nick Chubb in that value. Nick Chubb has a decent offensive line. Definitely not what they used to be when they were really stacked, but decent offensive line, and they have a better passing game. They have better weapons. They're a threat through the air, and let's just be honest. Nick Chubb is the best pure running back in the NFL, so it translates to standard fantasy football. He had 12 touchdowns last year. He was consistently over 1,000 yards rushing. So yeah, he gets disrespected.
Let's kind of shift back to the rest of the Browns right now. And
sorry, I'm passionate about Chubb.
I am too. Like Chubb and Cooper are kind of the only guys I see going in the first 5 rounds. Mm-hmm. But outside of that, like Elijah Moore is going to be sitting there. Donovan Peoples-Jones are going to be sitting there. Like that's a piece of the offense that I would love to have, and they're going to be sitting there in the 8th, 9th, 10th round for you to grab it. No one's going to value them because they're saying, oh, well, Deshaun Watson last year didn't come back. He's not going to be able to stay in that offense. Njoku's probably going to go late. And those are guys you can just snag up and steal. Like, again, you're not drafting them to be your wide receiver 2 at that point, but they can be it. They can absolutely be it. Njoku can end up being a starting tight end.
He was on pace for tight end 7 last year, and he had a couple rough games, and he had a couple injuries that kept him off the field for like 4 games maybe, and I think he finished at tight end 13. Very good tight end to plug in and play week. Let me make one more note on the Browns before we move on to our next team, and that's the whole note on Deshaun Watson. He's ranked in some of the bigger platforms. I think ESPN has him ranked at 9, and that's kind of where he's been sitting. But again, you look at some of these things. I 100% want to draft Deshaun Watson over the likes of Trevor Lawrence, Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott. Like you could even argue, and this is my opinion, I don't like Justin Fields as much as I like Deshaun Watson. I like the path to success for Deshaun Watson more because of the talent around him. So,
yeah. The only guy I would probably put over him in that is Dak. Only because I think Dak has a ton of weapons around him now, and he does every year. But he can throw up consistent numbers.
And he can throw a lot of picks though too. Dak has slowly been falling off in terms of those big jumps in numbers, and it's tough. Partly because he's in a very tough division. Too, So.
Well, and this is the last point. I promise, guys. Last point on the Browns. But this is a common theme amongst these teams that we like. This defense is good.
Yeah, this defense is going to keep the ball in the offense's hands.
Yeah, this defense is going to be good.
If you like the clip, like and subscribe. And always, click the little bell for notifications. Tune in next time.